Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Amanda Kramer, and I'm the Associate Director of Alumni Engagement at the University of Colorado Boulder's Leeds School of Business. Leeds is a top business school offering undergraduate, MBA, executive MBA, MS, and PhD programs and has an alumni network of over 49,000 strong, living and working around the world. For today's Leeds webinar, we're so excited to welcome Leeds faculty member Dr. Tony Kong here presenting the benefits of responsive leadership. A few housekeeping items before we begin. First, if you have any questions now or during the presentation that you would like to ask Tony, please send a question through the Q&A interface. We will monitor questions as they are submitted, and we will ask Tony your questions at the end of the presentation. As a reminder, for optimum audio quality, we do have everyone on mute except for myself and our speaker. If you experience any technical difficulties during the webinar, please notify us through the chat interface and one of our support specialists will touch base. Lastly, a link to access the webinar recording will be sent to all registrants on Thursday, along with a survey link. Now, I'm excited to introduce today's speaker. Tony Kong, PhD in Business Administration from the Washington University in St. Louis, is a full professor of organizational leadership and information analytics at the Leeds School of Business. He is a fellow of the Association for Psychological Science and a Fulbright U.S. Scholar for 2026 to 2027. Tony's research addresses the overarching question: how can we enable people to be more prosocial? Specifically, he has three streams of research: fostering individuals' positive experiences, fostering good organizational systems, and fostering high-trust societies. He has published over 70 peer-reviewed journal articles. According to Elsevier BV and Stanford University, he is a top 2 percentile scientist worldwide. Tony has received numerous research, teaching, and service awards. For example, he received a Best Conflict and Context Paper Award and a Most Influential Article Award from the Academy of Management's Conflict Management Division. Tony has actively engaged in various kinds of service work and leadership work for his professional and local communities. For example, he served as a trustee of St. Anthony's Hospital in Florida. He has been serving as an associate editor of the Journal of Management and Human Relations and a senior associate editor of the Journal of Organizational Behavior and on the editorial review board of numerous other journals. He was a rep at large of the International Association for Conflict Management, chairing multiple award committees. In 2024, he was elected to be program chair-elect of AOM Conflict Management Division. Welcome, Tony, and thank you so much for being here. I'm going to hand the webinar over to you now.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much, everyone, for attending this event. It's always exciting for me to share my research findings with others, hoping my research will be helpful to you all and many other people who aspire to be better leaders. So today, I'm glad to share some evidence-informed insights on the benefits of responsive leadership. So before discussing my research studies and findings, let me just talk a little bit about my background in case that you joined the session late. So as Amanda said, I received my PhD degree from Olin Business School at Washington University in St. Louis. And currently I'm a full professor and a division chair at Leeds School of Business. I'm an associate editor for multiple journals, so understanding the cutting edge knowledge in the field. I'm also a leader in the Academy of Management. Again, I'm really interested in serving the community and also helping moving the field forward. And this year, I was selected to be a Fulbright U.S. Scholar to Ireland, study human-centered workplace and how to build trust with HR practices. So as a scholar, I'm passionate about exploring how to promote people's prosocial behaviors in the workplace and also outside the workplace. Specifically, I address this overarching research question in three streams of research. First, fostering individuals' positive experience, such as trust, humor, gratitude, authenticity, etc. Second, fostering a good organizational system, including leadership, HR practices, culture, etc. And third, fostering high trust societies in different countries. As a division chair, I have been thinking a lot about how to be a good leader to my faculty colleagues in the division. There are so many things for me to remember about good leadership, even though I study leadership, but sometimes it can be overwhelming and complicated. For example, I need to learn how to set clear goals and communicate these goals to faculty colleagues, be a good example, have clear communication about our strategy and operations, encourage people, recognize people, motivate people, and also support them. So there are a lot of things to remember as a leader. We have been training leaders for a long time, focusing on positive behaviors and positive qualities of leaders. And if you look at the graph here, the leadership development program market reaches $91 billion in 2025 and is projected to reach $225 billion in 2034. So this is a huge market. We have been developing people to be leaders with good intentions and behaviors. However, I have been thinking about this question. Do leaders with good intentions or behaviors always generate good outcomes for employees? For example, if a leader shows gratitude to employees, will the leader generate good outcomes for all employees? Why is this question important at this point? When we look at the data of employee engagement in 2026, it's disappointing. Employee engagement fell to 20% globally, according to Gallup. According to Society for Human Resource Management, 1 out of 3 employees feel like just another number at work. Low engagement costs the global economy about $438 billion a year in lost productivity. So like me, you may ask, what are we missing in leadership development? So much money is spent on leadership development, but employee engagement is still low. Why? What should leaders focus on? So I offer some insights informed by my own research recently published in top journals in the field of management. I suggest that leaders focus on 3 factors: meaningfulness, safety, and availability. These are 3 psychological conditions for employee engagement. Meaningfulness is about a sense of return of investments of the self in work role performances. Simply put, if an employee invests their self in their work role, what is their sense of return of this investment? When employees have a sense of meaningfulness, they feel worthy and valued. They feel able to give to and receive from work and others at work. What are some typical types of influence? They are work elements, such as work tasks, work roles, and work interactions that create incentives or disincentives for investment of the self. Safety is about sense of being able to show and employ the self without fear of negative consequences to self-image, status, or career. You may be familiar with the term psychological safety. When employees experience safety, they feel the situations are trustworthy, secure, predictable, and clear in terms of behavioral consequences. What are some typical types of influence? They are elements of social systems, such as social relationships, group dynamics, management styles, and organizational norms that are more or less predictable, consistent, and non-threatening. Finally, availability is about a sense of possession of physical, emotional, and psychological resources necessary for investing the self in work role performance. When employees experience availability, they feel capable of driving physical, intellectual, and emotional energies into their work performance. What are some typical types of influence? Individual distractions that are more or less preoccupied in work role performance situations can reduce employees' sense of availability, whereas their physical energies, emotional energies, and confidence can increase their sense of ability. Today, I want to talk about 2 research papers I have recently published related to the issues of meaningfulness, safety, and availability. Regarding meaningfulness and safety, I will discuss the issue of leader gratitude expression and employee felt appreciation. Regarding safety and availability, I will discuss the implications of employees felt trust from their leader. So first, let's focus on leader gratitude expression and the felt appreciation of employees. Before I share my research, let me ask you this question. To what extent do you feel appreciated by your supervisor at your workplace? I have 7 statements here. To what extent do you agree with each of the statements? For each statement, if you choose strongly disagree, you get 1 point. If you choose disagree, you get 2 points. If you choose neutral, you get 3 points. If you choose agree, you get 4 points. And if you choose strongly agree, you get 5 points. Then you add these points together across the 7 statements. So first question, first statement, my supervisor makes sure I feel appreciated. Do you agree or disagree with this statement? You can ask yourself and then write down a number on your paper. Second, when I'm with my supervisor, sometimes they will tell me how much they appreciate me. Yes, no, agree, disagree. Number 3, my supervisor often tells me the things that they like about me. Number 4, my supervisor doesn't take me for granted. Number 5, my supervisor often expresses thanks when I do something nice, even if it's really small. Number 6, my supervisor notices when I do nice things for them. Number 7, my supervisor makes me feel appreciated. So add your points together across 7 statements. How many points did you get? If your total points are over 21 points, that means you largely feel appreciated by your supervisor. Unfortunately, many employees do not really feel appreciated at work, according to a survey. So why do many employees feel not appreciated at work? This is puzzling. One reason is that their supervisor may not express gratitude frequently. However, many companies have developed recognition programs and encourage leaders to show appreciation toward employees. Indeed, the Center for Creative Leadership suggests that giving thanks makes a person a better leader. Is there any other reason? Perhaps it's the way leaders express gratitude. Interestingly, there are many suggestions about how many ways to express gratitude at work. Some suggest there are 3 ways, some suggest 4 ways, some suggest 7 ways, some suggest 13 ways, and some even suggest 40 ways. As a human being, it is hard to remember 40 ways of gratitude expression. So considering the diverse ways of gratitude expression at work, my colleagues and I wonder whether there are some fundamental types of leader gratitude expression so we can theorize and empirically study these types. If employees don't like how supervisors express gratitude, will the employees feel less appreciated? So after discussions for multiple rounds, my colleagues and I agree on 2 fundamental types of gratitude expression, agentic and communal. Agentic gratitude expression fulfills employees' agentic need to feel confident and competent. On the other hand, communal gratitude expression fulfills employees' communal need to feel connected to others and socially worthy. So there is no scale tapping these 2 types of gratitude expression, so we have to develop a skill in order to empirically study these gratitude expressions. We went through 5 steps to develop the skills of supervisors, agentic gratitude expression, and communal gratitude expression. First, we collect examples of supervisor gratitude expression. Second, we identify most valid examples within each theme identified by us. And third, we create exemplary items and categorize them for agentic versus communal gratitude expression. And fourth, we test the content validity of the agentic and communal gratitude expression skills. And finally, we create the skills of employee preferences for supervisor agentic gratitude expression and for communal gratitude expression, and test the content validity of the new skills against their orbiting construct. So you can tell the procedure is very rigorous. So we found 13 categories of supervisor gratitude expression, and this finding is exciting and interesting to all of us. For example, in the food/beverage category, an example is buying a box chocolate. And some people will even say, my supervisor buy a turkey or a ham for us during the holiday. In the work-related/scheduled category, an example is allowing extra time for lunch or breaks. Additionally, we found the categories of compensation/benefits, career advancement, gifts/favors, notes/letters, relationship-oriented behaviors, physical displays, verbal displays, awards, parties/events, performance review, and other things. So you can see there are a variety of ways that we can show gratitude. After five-step progress, after five-step process, we develop a five-item scale tapping supervisor agentic gratitude expression and a seven-item scale tapping supervisor communal gratitude expression. For agentic gratitude expression, an example item is my supervisor expresses gratitude to me by facilitating my work, for example, covering my shift, giving me flexible schedules. For communal gratitude expression, an example item is my supervisor expresses gratitude to me by giving me homemade or purchased food or beverages, for example, donuts, ice cream, coffee, etc. So we can use these items to empirically assess people's level of perception of their supervisor's gratitude expression, and we can also use for helping organizations to assess their employee engagement. After we develop the new skills, we could address these two questions. First, do a supervisor's agentic gratitude expression and a communal gratitude expression influence an employee's felt appreciation differently? And second, does a supervisor's gratitude expression necessarily make an employee feel appreciated, even when such expression is not preferred by the employee? Given the interdependent nature of supervisor-employee relationships, we use a theory in social psychology called a risk regulation theory. The fundamental logic of this theory is that in an interdependent relationship, people appraise the other party's behaviors to gauge the level of the other's regard for them. Based on this assessment, people behave accordingly either to take risk on this person or avoid risk. We argue that employees' felt regard or felt appreciation depends on the extent to which their supervisor is responsive to their agentic and communal needs. Those with a strong agentic need want their supervisor to find them confident and competent, whereas those with a stronger communal need want their supervisor to see them as a close colleague or friend or a worthy team member. So this is our model for our empirical study. Supervisors' agentic or communal gratitude expression and employees' preference will have a congruence or incongruence effect on employees' felt appreciation and a subsequent voice behavior. We focus on voice behavior here because this behavior is a common form of risk-taking in a relationship. When a supervisor's agentic or communal gratitude expression matches an employee's preference, the employee will feel appreciated by the supervisor and therefore speak up. In contrast, when the gratitude expression does not match an employee's preference, the employee will feel less appreciated and therefore speak up less. Let's dig a little deeper into the model and have our prediction. So first we look at the fit effect. When supervisor expression frequency matches employee preference, the more frequent supervisor gratitude expression is, the higher felt appreciation is. Then when we look at the misfit effect, we can say when supervisor gratitude expression frequency and employee preference do not match with each other, the level of felt appreciation will decrease. Third, we look further into the agentic form of gratitude expression, misfit effect. We predict employee felt appreciation is lower when supervisors over-express gratitude in an agentic way than when supervisors under-express gratitude in an agentic way. The reason is that underexpression is unclear about whether supervisors are irresponsive to employee preference due to resource constraints. After all, agentic gratitude expression requires resources such as money or work opportunities. In contrast, overexpression is clear about supervisor irresponsiveness to employee preference, thus creating psychological burden to employees. Finally, when we look further into the communal misfit asymmetry effect, we predict employee felt appreciation is lower when supervisor under-express gratitude in a communal way than when supervisor over-express gratitude in a communal way. The reason is that communal expression has a low cost. Under-expression is clear about supervisor irresponsiveness to employee preference. In contrast, over-expression, though conveying supervisor irresponsiveness to employee preference, does convey supervisor's high regard for the employee. Finally, we look at the link between felt appreciation and employee voice. The reason why these two have a positive association is that felt appreciation reduces employees' concerns about voice, which is risky in nature. First, felt appreciation assures employees that their supervisor will take the voice seriously. And second, felt appreciation increases employees' confidence in the voice being perceived as well-meaning and respectful. So to test our model, we conduct a two-wave survey study. We collect data from 124 matched supervisor-employee dyads. On average, employees worked with their supervisor for about 3 years. In the first wave, we collected data of supervisor gratitude expression, employee preference, and employee felt appreciation. 3 weeks later, in the second wave, we collect data of employee voice. To rule out alternative explanations, we control for dyad sex differences, how long employees had worked with their supervisor, and employee felt an obligation to their supervisor. So this is what we found. At a first glance, you can see there are different shapes of the response surface plots indicating that indeed supervisor agentic gratitude expression operates differently than supervisor communal gratitude expression. First, we focus on the congruence line, which captures supervisor's responsive agentic gratitude expression that matches employee preference. The higher supervisor responsive expression is, the higher employees felt appreciation is. That's pretty intuitive and obvious. Then we look at the incongruence line that captures irresponsive agentic gratitude expression. That is when supervisor expression mismatches employee preference for agentic gratitude expression. There are two key findings to highlight here. First, the larger the discrepancy between supervisor agentic expression and the employee preference, the lower felt appreciation is. And second, the levels of felt appreciation in response to supervisor's agentic gratitude underexpression versus overexpression do not significantly differ. So that means our earlier prediction about there's asymmetry for agentic gratitude expression does not get supported. Now let's turn to supervisor communal gratitude expression. First, we focus on the congruence line that captures responsive gratitude expression. Similar to responsive agentic gratitude expression, when supervisors have more frequent responsive communal gratitude expression, their employees feel more appreciated. Then we focus on the incongruence line that captures irresponsive communal gratitude expression. That is when supervisor communal expression mismatches employee preference. Again, there are two things to highlight here. First, the larger the discrepancy between supervisor communal gratitude expression and employee preference, the lower felt appreciation is. This pattern is similar to the pattern for agentic gratitude expression. But different from the pattern for agentic gratitude expression, here, employee felt appreciation is lower in response to communal gratitude under expression versus over expression. What does that mean? If supervisors do not know employee preference for communal gratitude expression, it's always better for supervisors to overexpress gratitude in a communal way than underexpress gratitude in a communal way. So when we test the entire model, we found empirical support. Simply put, supervisor responsive gratitude expression, either in an agentic form or in a communal form, promotes employee felt appreciation and voice behavior. Supervisor irresponsive gratitude expression reduces employee felt appreciation and voice. Specifically regarding communal gratitude expression, if supervisors do not know their employees' preference, it's better for them to overexpress gratitude than underexpress gratitude. So you may ask, what about employee felt obligation? Maybe they feel obligated to speak up. When accounting for employee felt appreciation, we did not find any significant effects of employee felt obligation on employee voice. What does that mean? It is felt appreciation rather than felt obligation that drives employees' voice behavior. We conducted a supplementary experiment study and replicate our findings of the survey study. We randomly assigned 99 MBA students to two conditions and manipulate their feeling of being appreciated by their supervisor or their feeling of not appreciated by their supervisor. Feeling appreciated versus unappreciated leads to lower perceived relational risk with their supervisor and higher voice behavior, but has no significant effect on felt obligation. Again, this result suggests felt obligation and felt appreciation operate as two separate systems governing employee behaviors. So we should not kind of lump them together or mix them up. So what's the main takeaway from this research? Leaders should thank employees responsively. Leaders should express gratitude to employees according to employees' preferences for agentic and a communal gratitude expression. Now let's talk about my second paper on felt trust. This addressed the issue of safety and availability. So trust is important to leadership effectiveness. Based on research, trust is shaped by perceptions of the other party's ability, benevolence, and integrity, as well as one's own propensity to trust other people in general. Trust can predict a range of beneficial outcomes, including informed risk-taking, job performance, citizenship behaviors, and reduced counterproductive behaviors. That's why trust is essential to leadership effectiveness, why leaders should focus on building and managing trust with their employees. However, an interesting question is felt trust or feeling of being trusted by the leader a blessing to all employees? The answer is no. Felt trust has pros and cons. It can acknowledge employees' competence and value, but it can also create psychological burden for employees to meet the expectation and be relied on. We argue that a felt trust is not a blessing to all employees. Its effect depending on employees' self-esteem at work, known as organization-based self-esteem or OBSE. We propose that an OBSE contingent work engagement model of felt trust explains the double-edged implications of felt trust. Among high OBSE employees, felt trust promotes their work engagement and job performance and reduces their work-home conflict. But among low OBSE employees, felt trust paradoxically reduces their work engagement and job performance and increase their work-home conflict. So OBSE is defined as self-perceived value that one has of oneself as an organization member acting within an organizational context. It's shaped by employees' organizational experience over a period of time and is relatively stable. OBSE operates as a personal lens through which employees interpret and respond to other people's treatment or feedback or other social signals at work. So we can think about the relationship between felt trust and employee OBSE in a 2x2 way. Employees with high OBSE have more available resource to meet their supervisor's expectation and be relied on by their supervisor. So high felt trust from their supervisor is consistent with their more positive self-views, but low felt trust from the supervisor is inconsistent with their more positive self-views. In contrast, employees with low OBSE are concerned about safety and do not want potential negative consequences. So high felt trust from their supervisor is inconsistent with their less positive self-views, triggering their concerns about safety and potential negative consequences to them. But low felt trust from their supervisor is consistent with their less positive self-view, making them feel more safe. So we conduct two survey studies to test our model. The first study is a two-way survey study conducted in the United States. We recruited 470 employees from 213 work groups. We measured their felt trust in the first wave and their OBSE and work engagement in the second wave. Our key finding is in response to higher level of felt trust from their supervisor, employees with lower OBSE actually are less engaged in their work, but employees with higher OBSE are more engaged in their work. Study 2 is a three-wave survey study conducted in China. We want to replicate our findings in a different culture and extend our first study's finding. We measure felt trust and OBSE in the first wave, work engagement in the second wave, and the task performance and the work-home conflict in the third wave. Our key findings are first, we replicate our first study. In response to higher level of felt trust from the supervisor, higher OBSE employees are more engaged in their work, but lower OBSE employees are less engaged in their work. And second, we also found that in response to higher level of felt trust from their supervisor, higher OBSE employees have stronger job performance and less work-home conflict. But lower OBSE employees have weaker job performance and a more work-home conflict. The negative outcomes of felt trust are consistent with our predictions, but counterintuitive, right? Who would expect giving more trust to employees can have these negative outcomes for employees? However, these results can help explain why we see low work engagement globally. Study 2 is a three-way, sorry. So what's the main takeaway from this research? Leaders should trust their employees responsively. Leaders should give trust to employees according to employees' OBSE level. In the meantime, leaders should elevate their employees' OBSE, make employees feel competent, important, and valued. Only when employees' OBSE is elevated will leaders' trust work as intended. That's why it's important for leaders to build a caring and grateful culture and focus on building employee strengths. Now let's go back to the puzzle we discussed earlier. While the leadership development program market is growing rapidly, engagement stays low and it reaches its lowest level since 2021. What are we missing? What should leaders focus on? Based on the insights from my research published recently, I suggest that leaders should be responsive to employees' preferences and attributes. Leadership should focus on promoting meaningfulness, safety, and availability to employees. And I suggest 6 steps for leaders to consider, and I call this action framework 2C, 2K, and 2T. First, cultivate a caring and a grateful culture. Why is this important? A caring and a grateful culture provides positive meaning, safety, and availability of positive energies and resources. Showing gratitude is one of the simplest yet most powerful things we can do for each other. Unfortunately, according to a survey of 2,000 Americans conducted by the John Templeton Foundation, people are less likely to feel or express gratitude at work than anywhere else. As a result, many people do not feel appreciated by their leader. Many people are not thankful for their current jobs, ranking them that last in the list of things they feel grateful for. However, many people do agree that a hearing thank you at work does make them feel good and motivated. UC Berkeley's Greater Good Science Center concludes that Americans actively suppress gratitude on the job, even to the point that robbing themselves of happiness. Why do we want to rob ourselves of happiness? It's not difficult to address this problem, actually. Let's build a caring and grateful culture within our organization. Second, cultivate employee strengths. Why is this important? Strengths make people feel competent and increase their positive energies and resources. And third, know people's preferences. This not only is necessary for being responsive to employee preferences, but also is key to showing care, understanding, and consideration to employees. Fourth, know employees' attributes, such as their self-esteem at work, their personality, etc. By doing so, leaders also show their appreciation for who employees are as unique humans. Number 5, thank employees as frequently as possible. It's not difficult to do, but in ways aligned with employee preferences. And finally, give trust to employees and make them feel trusted, yet according to their self-esteem at work. Thank you so much for attention and engagement. I welcome your comments, suggestions, and questions. I look forward to the conversation with you all.
Great. Thank you so much, Tony. As a reminder, if you have a question, please submit it through the Q&A interface, and we will ask Tony your questions right now. First, we'll take a question here from Robert, who said, our response tones, openings, and closings meant to be different to employees? And I know you addressed tone, Tony. Could you talk about kind of opening and closing conversations with employees? I think that's what the question's zeroing in on.
Yeah, I think like before we actually talk about sandwich methods like positive, negative, positive, but like based on what I've heard, this method does not work anymore. I think that people are really sensitive to tone, and if research shows like we pay more attention to nonverbal behavior, 70% of our attention actually is focused on nonverbal behavior, including tone, facial expression, gestures. And 30% of time probably focus on linguistic cues. So I think, one thing, I focus on myself, developing my own leadership skills is to kind of think about how I talk about certain things rather than what I talk about. Because sometimes what I talk about is less important because people are kind of looking for cues from your tone and from your facial expression. Are you serious about this? Is this really a serious matter? And all of that actually shapes employees or your colleagues' sense of safety and also sense of rapport with you. So I think a tone is absolutely important, and that's something that if we think about how we communicate through technology, that's a very important to human communication because oftentimes we kind of misunderstand each other's words through text or through email, but when we talk with each other in person, it feels different. This also related to like some of you probably interested like how can I lead or manage people in the age of AI? You know, I think AI can help us and also maybe not help us in certain ways. AI after all is a technology, so like it does not have this kind of human element when you use AI to communicate with each other. But I think AI can help us to be creative, and think about like the way that we express gratitude to each other at work. Maybe AI can be used as a source of inspiration or creativity and give us some ideas about how can we think other people in a creative way, in a fun way. So, technology can be used for different purposes. So it's really how we think about use it for human purposes. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, that was great. Thank you so much. Next, we have a question from Jane who asks, what signals do you look for that someone is struggling, even if they aren't saying it directly?
Yeah, so you can think about this from two perspectives because people would not talk about their struggle or their distress because oftentimes we're thinking about image risk, like we don't want to risk our professional image. And also, usually our cultural values tell us we need to be strong. Showing vulnerability and a weakness can be a sign of not being capable or competent at work. But you also heard kind of a different message from TED Talks, like we need to show vulnerability and also weakness to other people because that helps us to think about authenticity and we express ourselves in an authentic way. I think it's all context dependent because it's really dependent on the cue from the leader. If the leader shows vulnerability, that potentially will suggest, psychological safety is important, and then leader intends to foster psychological safety in the group. In that sense, you can maybe experiment, being more vulnerable and showing more weakness. So this is on the side of employee. For the leader side, like how do we know people are distressed or, going through some tough times? One thing is you can look for their emotions because sometimes people don't talk about it, but their emotions leak their inner experience. If they show signs of distress, if they show signs of anxiety, it might be a good idea to reach out to employee and approach the conversation in a sensitive way rather than probing like what's wrong with your life. Maybe kind of go through some small talk and then talk about like maybe organizational changes or what's going on in the workplace, and then hopefully using that as a way to make an employee feel comfortable and talk about their experience in the workplace. Another thing is you can look for behavioral cues. Again, like, people would not lie about with their behaviors. Are they actually showing up frequently in the workplace? If you think about like a workplace is energizing, people want that positive energy, so they want to be around. But if the workplace is depleting, then people want to shy away from that workplace because they want to recover themselves. So, how frequently do you see people, and then, how energetic they are in the workplace when they're there? That also can tell you, the situation with employees. Um, of course, after COVID, like, people don't, a lot of people actually work from home, and then they don't see like, working in the office is necessary. So this create another barrier for managers to know like the emotional experience of our employees. Um, so I think, regular check-in, and also you can also look for pattern communication pattern, or whether the words or the tone of their communication changes over time. So that's why I think, the overall takeaway from my research is like, doing good thing is great. Like we want people to do more good things, gratitude expression, trust people, but also we want to do it with more mindfulness, with more emotional intelligence, because everybody's different. We are manage a group of diverse people, and they have different experience, they have different preferences. So it requires sensitivity, not be overly sensitive, but like a sensitivity to people's changes, because sometimes people don't want to talk about their changes in their work experience or life experience.
Thank you so much, Tony. Um, Next, going back to AI, we have a question from Kate. How do you see AI being utilized in soft skills training, and how do you see it evolving over time?
Yeah, so this is a really important question. And also, I am actually trying to figure out the answer myself, because when I teach executive leadership to EMBA students, executive MBA students, they ask me similar question, like, what can we do with leadership and management in the age of AI? And what are some soft skills that we really care about and then we should develop further? I think, AI can be as I said, AI can be a source of inspiration and creativity, because it's basically a pool of human wisdom. So, just another example of like, uh, have playfulness in the workplace. Maybe you don't have a lot of idea how to be playful. You don't want to offend people. You don't want to seem like not serious about the work, but you still want to be lighthearted. That's something I want to accomplish. Like, if we can make a workplace more fun and lighthearted, maybe people can be more energetic and then they want to be in that workspace more. So maybe you can use AI for different ideas. It's kind of a brainstorming with AI. So AI, in that sense, become like your consultant for your leadership, and then think about how to design workplace in a creative way and in a fun way. Another thing that I think is really important is empathy, because AI can give you standardized questions. AI can make you more efficient and to some extent maybe more innovative. But AI cannot, at least at the current stage of AI, I don't think it can empathize with human emotions and sentiment very well. And that's, I think, is uniquely human. And I think we should amplify that human skills to understand each other's emotional experience, also each other's work situations. If you think about how much stress people have after AI, disrupts the workplace, a lot of us actually experience loneliness or anxiety or even frustration. So that suggests that leaders even need to be human to them, and then show emotional intelligence, empathy, appreciation, so make people feel safe. Again, as I mentioned, there are three things we really need to focus on to be a good leader, a responsive leader: meaningfulness, safety, and availability. So I think a lot of time when AI is replacing certain jobs, people start wondering what is the meaning of their work, why they are there. Um, what can we do to increase the work meaning? A lot of time people are really passionate about the work. So how can we maintain their passion and leverage AI to make them more passionate about their work. Um, Availability, AI can be a resource. AI can also be a replacement of human capital. So in that sense, it's also about the framing, like as a leader, how do we frame that situation? And also the behavioral consistency. If we say something like AI can augment our human behaviors or skills, like how do we do that? Like, employees are looking for cues to check like whether leaders are really mean what they said. Also, I think a strategic thinking is important, ethical thinking is important. Um, you know, AI can provide some big picture vision and a strategy for us as leaders, but AI sometimes do not know human ethics very well. So I think that requires our judgment call, like whether the suggestion provided by AI is ethical or whether it's actually going to be positive and impactful. So this requires some critical thinking and also human judgment. Um, and we talk about critical thinking in the business school, but now it becomes even more important. And what does that mean in the age of AI? I think it requires everybody's careful thinking, not only faculty members and leads, but also students, staff members, alum. Like we need ideas. Like what do we mean by critical thinking in this age? Um, Also, I think another thing that I actually mention a lot to my faculty colleagues is adaptability and also resilience. So if you look at Leeds values, actually adaptability become part of it. We really care about that value, care about that competence because we're living in a world with uncertainty, and it requires quick learning, require experimentation, require adjustment. So all of that suggests that we need to be very adaptable. Who knows tomorrow what will happen, but we need to learn how to adapt to our environment.
Thank you. And you've answered this to some extent, Tony, but Nathan would really love to hear from you, specifically related to how can leaders build and keep trust with employees while trying to integrate AI into the workplace?
Yeah, so as you see, like the data is not very encouraging, right? Only 20% of 20% employees are engaged, and then like, this is on global basis, and then US is relative better. It's about 30%, but still it's a low uh, engagement. And oftentimes, if you think about how people think about organizations or now with AI implementation, um, people may be cynical about like what is the direction of company development and then what is the value of employees. So I think one thing is about framing, like how do we use AI for our work and what does that mean to employees? Employees are looking for clarity and transparency. So you may not have a clear answer, but at least you provide some information about what we're going to do with AI. And I think, more important, employees are looking for the intent underlying the message. People are really good at reading the intent of other people's behavior or message. The intent can be like whether you are trying to do good to us, whether you are trying to replace us or do harm to us. Humans have this evolved ability to sense other people's motivation quickly. This is part of our intuition system. Also, I think be a role model. We often forget, like we are an example to the people we lead. So how do we do things potentially can be an example to our people and then give them cues like what is appropriate, what is not appropriate. So that can also be important to trust building. If you do unethical things or questionable things, then people will question your integrity. They will not trust you. So in AI age, like, if you think about integrity, are you transparent about what you do? Maybe AI is helping you with certain writing or certain part of work. Did you disclose yourself? And how are decisions made with AI? Are you transparent about this? This is not only about AI, but also like before AI age, like, do you explain the metrics? Like, how do you assess employee performance? How do you evaluate, like, differentiate good employees versus not so good employees? Like, all of that sometimes are not clearly explained to employees. So then they kind of question, like, how did you make decisions? When there's no information, people kind of fill the information gap with their assumptions or with their beliefs. And oftentimes those are not positive. So I think, transparency and clarity are very important. And also, if there is a mistake or oversight, maybe like, are you courageous enough to admit it? This also shows humility because nobody is perfect. We make mistakes, but if you can admit mistakes you make and then also tell people like this is my remedy plan, people have more confidence in you because that means your human limitations and also you are willing to learn. This also builds a psychological safety in the environment, in the group. And then recently I just heard kind of a clip talking about, if you don't know something, should you admit that you don't know something? The suggestion is yes, you should admit that you don't know something because we have our own limit in terms of knowledge. I think it's the same, like, a great leader knows their human limitation, knows their knowledge limitation, but they also know their strength. So that's how I see trust building in the age of AI because not everything is clear and the leaders don't know everything, but you at least know like what you know and what you don't know.
That's great. Thank you so much. Next, we have a question from Brandon who wondered, as a leader, how can I best respond when someone challenges my perspective, both one-on-one and then also when we're in a group setting with the entire team?
So this person is always challenging to the leader.
Yes.
Okay, so I think first is to understand. I mean, so when you encounter that kind of situation, you make attribution. Is it about me as a leader or is it about that person as an employee? So that's really important because you will go different path when you think about solutions. If it's about you, is it about how you approach people? Maybe that person just doesn't like how you approach people, or maybe they don't like how you think about certain issues. I mean, like we encounter that kind of situation a lot as faculty members. Maybe some students just don't like how we position ourselves on certain issues, and then they will just challenge us on certain kind of issues all the time. But that's okay. Like, instead of taking an authoritarian approach, we can take an open-minded approach and then just co-creation of the knowledge, co-creation of the perspective. So maybe shift, if it is about your approach, then shift the approach from kind of a preaching or informing approach to inquiry or co-learning approach. But if this is about the other person, the employee, maybe their personality is like that. They just, skeptical and then also cynical about everything people say. Then maybe you can have a one-on-one conversation with the person and then trying to dig deeper about like why they do something like that. So the first thing that I did after becoming department chair is to talk with each person one-on-one. I spent an hour with each person, trying to understand each of them, like their experience, their background, their preferences, and their views on various department issues, like, what they want to see, and then what are the suggestions. I write down everything, and I kind of, this is really helpful to me, even though it's very time consuming. I get a kind of like conceptual map about like what do people know, who is good at what, and then what are some pain points in the group. So I think, oftentimes as a leader, we are so busy and then we focus on bottom line and then we kind of forgot like we need to spend time with people. These are really useful knowledge because they don't share this kind of knowledge in a big setting like a group meeting, but they will share with you in private. So based on the comment, it seems like even one-on-one, that person is challenging to you. So I think the first thing is to understand whether the person maybe doesn't like how you lead people, how you approach people, or maybe that's a sign of distress. Sometimes people become difficult because that's their coping mechanism. There's something going on in their life, and then they don't know how to cope with that. So that's called emotion focused coping in psychology. So people can lash out, people can resort to other kind of irrational behaviors. So that's actually something I talk about in the college and on committee as well. Like, when people have seemingly irrational behaviors or cynical behaviors, we always jump into conclusion that a person maybe is not a good citizen. But maybe we don't know much about their what they are going through. So instead of making that assumption and jumping to conclusion, maybe we should understand that person's experience, work experience and outside of work experience. Um, uh, both sides, and then we can understand the person holistically.
Great, thank you. And we are taking a look at the time. Let's take our last question here from Sarah, which is, how do you encourage experimentation while managing risk and ensuring a safe enough environment that employees want to experiment and innovate?
That's a really good question because I am trying to figure out myself, like, because there are so many resource constraints, and also there is hierarchies, and then there are also organizational structure. I mean, it depends on what type of organization you're in. Some are very flexible and fluid, and then the structure is not rigid. So experimentation is kind of a norm. Like people just experiment different ideas and then ask for forgiveness. So one of the example I give in class is called Ideal. This company in California, um, Ideal is an innovation company, and then they do a lot of design innovation. They always like try new things and then ask for forgiveness. I mean, that's part of their culture. But in many organizations, maybe the hierarchy is very rigid, and then also, there is a very clear communication chain. In that sense, like how do I know like it's okay for me to experiment new idea? So maybe like as a leader, if you have power, maybe you can create some special projects and then just allow people to do an experiment in that special project. So it would not affect like the entire group. It's kind of like do a trial and then see whether the trial will have positive impact or negative impact on a smaller group of people. That also make people feel special because you create a special task force, special project for these people, and then let them use their creativity, maybe incorporate with AI for this special project, and then report back to the leader. What are the lessons learned? Um, but also, I mean, I think it's tied to some earlier questions. Like people are very sensitive to psychological safety and also tone of their leader. If as a leader, if you appreciate some experimentation, even though it fails, then that sends a cue to the entire group, like it's okay to fail. But oftentimes, when we focus so much on bottom line and also resource constraints, then we don't kind of want failures. But like any kind of invention, any kind of societal progress, it involves experimentation and failures. So it is kind of a natural process of any kind of progress. But I mean, because we're so focused on bottom line, then experimentation seems like a cost center. It's a very risky thing for reaching bottom line. Again, I think it's the mindset of leader. What do they care about? Do they care about innovation or do they care about performance? Do they care about learning or do they care about like, following the rule? Um, I I don't have clear one size fits all answer, but I think it depends on the context, organizational culture, depends on leadership style, their mindset, and also maybe depending on your group norm. So if you want to do experimentation yourself, maybe it's risky. Maybe you can form alliance, a small group of people, and then do experimentation together and see whether that will be a collective impact. So if you feel unsafe yourself, one way to think about it is can you bring more people together with you along the journey? And then if you can make an impact together, then great. If you fail together, then you diffuse the responsibility in that sense. Like your leader cannot blame you alone. I mean, blame a small group of people. So that potentially will create some sort of circle of safety yourself or a container for yourself, and then so you can try different things.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much to everyone for joining us for today's presentation. And thank you again, Tony, for this great information. At this time, we invite you to provide feedback on the webinar by answering the following poll question. On a scale from 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this webinar to a friend or fellow Leeds alum? As a reminder, all webinar attendees will receive an email on Thursday with a link to the recording of this presentation as well as a survey. To view upcoming webinars as well as previous recordings, please visit our website at colorado.edu/business/alumni. In the meantime, have a great rest of your day. Thank you for your time and go Buffs. Thank you, Tony. Goodbye,
Thank
everyone.
you, everyone. Bye.